All right. Hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Talking Investing. You're here with Tom and George on Good Friday. So the stock market in the U.S. was closed today, but cryptocurrency never closes, and it was a big week, so we still have a lot to talk about. How you doing, George?
I don't know yet, Tom. I need to become. You got to get me happy, Tom. I came here to become happy.
Let's get happy. We ended on a good note this week. All right, first, step one in happiness is smashing the like button. You guys could do us a huge favor. This is a holiday in the U.S. We really got to get some attention to the stream. So please hit the like button for us. We're going for 100 likes. All right, let's get that out of the way. Huh?
No, Chris just wrote, "Sell everything, George. You want to be happy."
No,
I'm in the middle. I'm in the thick of it now. Dude, I'm going down with the ship.
I don't think it's time to, as you guys might imagine, I do not think it's time to sell everything. And we're going to talk about where people are, where the fear and greed index is, what's going on. We're going to have to talk some geopolitics. I don't want to get crazy with it because I know, it's a touchy subject and it's upsetting to people, but we also cannot ignore it because really that's the number one thing driving the stock market in the short term. So we're going to talk about all those things. Some Bitcoin miners had some announcements, one of which I didn't expect, so I was pleasantly surprised. So there is a bunch of stuff to go through. And I bought some stocks this week outside of this list. So I'm going to tell you one or two that I have gotten interested in. One's a position I've had for a long time. One's a new position that I just opened for whatever it's worth. Not financial advice, but I'll just let you guys know what I'm doing. And we should get a poll going, George.
Tom, I want to tell you something before we get a poll going. I was thinking something. I actually feel violated by these AI companies now. They just took my Bitcoin and threw it out the window.
I feel violated.
Violated.
Because they're messing with the price of Bitcoin.
They used and abused me. Was that an April Fool's joke about Fred, by the way?
Yes, it was.
Oh, wow. That was a good one.
George was hopeful. He found a prominent person on Twitter that said Fred resigned, but it was on April 1st, and it was one of what I'm sure was a lot of April Fool's nonsense going on out there. Let us know in the chat if you can see us, if you can hear us. Can you see me? Can you see George? Can you hear me? Can you hear George? Always appreciate it. Want to make sure everybody's able to hear what we're saying.
You know what? I'll answer that. Would it be Sanel? I sold out my marathon back in October, and I think I was down over 50% when I sold it. Yes. What are you down on your Mara right now, Tom?
All right. I'm down over 50% in my Mara, and I've dollar cost averaged in all the way down. I bought some Mara in the sixes in February. So and that was about the end of it. I picked up a couple more and then I said, that is it. It's just been too many years of dollar cost averaging in, and I can't imagine it's ever going to retest the sixes, although certainly nothing's impossible, but I'm done. I have my Mara. I have way more Mara than I ever expected. We'll talk a little more in detail on my thoughts on Mara if people are interested in. It's not my favorite company, but I have an investment thesis on it, and I'm going to stick with it, and we'll see how it goes. I may be wrong and I may be right. Dan, thank you for the super chat. Dan said, Mara making huge moves right now. Well, I would like to know what some of those huge moves are. So I know, and I'm being serious, Dan. If you got some specifics, I'd love to hear some specifics. I know they've partnered up. I know they've shifted gears, and I'm expecting good things, not great things. I'm expecting good things to come. I'm expecting they've turned the corner. And having said that, I will be keeping my eye on that one for sure, because it's in a, even with this very difficult run we've had, and let's call it like it is. So far, 2026 has been horrible for the Bitcoin mining / high performance computing stocks. It just has been. Even with that said, I only have one in the red, and it's Marathon, and it's down more than 50%. So it has so drastically underperformed everything else. And the only reason I'm down, in the low 50% is because I kept dollar cost averaging in. I mean, I'm probably down 80% from my most expensive purchase. Pogo.
So I threw up a poll, Tom.
Huh? You put up, let's see.
About Bitcoin next moves.
Bitcoin next moves. Okay, 65 to 67,000. 67,000 plus, so that's your up scenario. 55 to 65,000, below 55,000. So where are we going? And vote if you can. If you're on a device where you can vote, let's get some votes in and see where sentiment is at, because it's been all over the place. We've had optimism, pessimism. We've had geopolitical stuff giving us fake outs in both directions, just relentlessly. So it's been a little bit of whiplash in the market. But with that said, I'm going to talk about the fact that with all of the massive volatility, the VIX spiking, the stock market pulling back, Bitcoin's just chugging along. It's just going sideways. And we'll look at the one-day chart, and I'll show you what I mean by that. But we are multiple months into absolute sideways consolidation. We're 6 months into a bear market, and I think there's an awful lot of reasons to be optimistic. And so for as tough as this been, and it's been tough, I mean, we've been here all along, and, we've been dealing with it like everybody else has. But I think there's reason to be optimistic about the second quarter. Now, we're only April 3rd. We're 3 days into the second quarter. So, Bitcoin hasn't had much time to make its move yet. The Bitcoin miners / high performance computing / data center energy companies, I don't know, we got to find a shorter way to say that. But they're no longer necessary. Some of these aren't even Bitcoin miners anymore. But the group of stocks that we've been watching that were once pure play Bitcoin miners, they've mostly started April out positively. Having said that, and you'll see, I have the big board up from yesterday. In the U.S. today, the markets were closed, so there was no trading of stocks in the U.S. However, crypto never sleeps, so crypto continued trading. But you'll see, Marathon was up 8% yesterday. Now, it was up 8% all the way to $8.71. I mean, this should be a $30 stock, in my opinion. And that's only because I don't have a high level of confidence in them. They could be or should be more than that, but they're not. They're $8.71, even on a big up day. So you'll see, to me, that's a crazy number to me. CleanSpark at $8.79 is mystifying to me. Riot put out some information today. So that's one of the things that surprised me. I want to go through that. They put out a quarterly update, which I wasn't expecting, so I was pleasantly surprised. And I thought it was a very good update. Riot is moving along better than I thought. That is obviously also been a long-term position for me that I've dollar cost averaged into over years and years. And I'm still holding it. And I still think that I don't think we're headed down into a crypto winter. I think that we have bottomed out. I called that in real time 2 months ago. And so far, we can look, and one thing's for sure, that was certainly a local low. The question is it going to be a bottom? So I'm going to go to the 1 day for a minute and just show you. I mean, we talked, this was a Friday Friday the 6th. Now, I made a bunch of purchases and trades on the 5th on Thursday because opportunity was just screaming. So that's one of the biggest buying days I've had in the last year and a half. And on the 6th, boom, immediately rewarded. We bottomed out. We tested 60,000 almost exactly on Coinbase. We got down to $60,001.00. So that is almost a perfect test of 60,000. And we have not, that was now 2 months ago. We haven't been anywhere near 60,000 since. So this green line at 63 has pretty much held. And really, for the most part, this purple line at just under 66,000, that's been the real line of support for almost 2 full months now. So if this isn't sideways consolidation, then I don't know what is. That's how I'm looking at this. All right, let's go. If you guys could smash the like button, it would be much appreciated. We're going to be at record lows on the stream today because today was a holiday in the U.S., so a lot of people are not engaged with the stock market. But cryptocurrency, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And sooner than later, the stock market's going to be the same thing. So that's on the way.
Man, the polls all over the place, Tom.
I've been watching it change. This is wild. So let's let people keep voting for a few more minutes because this goes right now as a snapshot of the poll. There's a two-way tie for first and a two-way tie for last, and they're all not far apart at all.
This is crazy.
Right. So
and I did it real tight for a reason. You know what I mean?
And right. These are tight ranges, and the highest number on this is 30%. There's two that have 30%, and two that have 20%. So there's your 100%.
Right.
And I shouldn't say I'm surprised because this speaks exactly to, this is the definition of uncertainty. When you have a poll that shows this, right, it's fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And those are times to buy. You know, not financial advice. That rule is not 100%, but that is one of the big indicators that now might be a time you want to take a real close look at some of the things on your watch list and see, you know, this is usually rewarded. And I'll say, I don't know if guts is the right word. Maybe just, Are you methodical enough? Are you disciplined enough to buy low? Because the name of this, I mean, this isn't rocket science. Buy low, sell high. And it's not always going to go that way in a straight line, right? A lot of times, right, time is a big factor. And I have an article on that. And a lot of people are giving up on Bitcoin because of this sideways consolidation period. They just can't wait it out and they're bailing out. But big money is not bailing out. So I think structurally we're set up for good things. What's
Did you read the Google quantum computing problem with Bitcoin that they solved?
Well, be careful how you frame that.
I don't know how to say it. I mean, this is what they said. They said they solved and they wouldn't release it.
They said, so let's talk about it. We'll talk about that because it dominated the news cycle. It affected the price. This dip, we're in a 3-day red dip. It's not dramatic, but this dominated the news cycle. I saved a bunch of articles on this, and I'm just going to tell you I'll tell you my opinion up front, and then we'll get into it. And there was another firm that put out a report that even went way past where Google went. Google is claiming it's going to only take 500,000 qubits to crack the Bitcoin wallets, and their benchmark was, right, a block is solved every 10 minutes. If they can crack a wallet under 10 minutes, so they're saying 500,000 qubits will do that in 9 minutes, 9 to 9.5 minutes. And if they can do that, then they can steal people's Bitcoin. Now, that has nothing to do with the Bitcoin blockchain itself. The Bitcoin blockchain is impenetrable to quantum computing. You can look that up. I don't have to revisit that. But the wallets and transactions are not. So there will be a migration at some point. However, it is my personal opinion that that report was completely ridiculous and total intentional FUD. And then another company came out and went even beyond that. And they would not release their findings. And they said, well, we can't release our findings because that's dangerous. The first thing everybody should know is there's not one working quantum computer on this earth that has anything that resembles. If everything goes perfectly, we're many years away from even 500,000 qubits. Never mind the multi-millions of qubits that until Google put this report out, they thought was necessary to break the cryptography on Bitcoin wallets. So I don't believe what they said. They're not showing their results, and it is based on a series of assumptions. So it's not actual proof. They just said, we think if A plus B plus C plus D, then E, which is we'll be able to break the transaction before the 10 minutes are up. So there's an awful lot of road in between that. And even their scenario was, 3, 4, 5 years out, even if we could do what they say we could do, which I'm just telling you, we're going to talk a lot about prediction markets. If there's money to be put on the line on that, I will be putting money on it because my confidence is so high that is ridiculous. Those are my thoughts. We should do a poll on that and see what people think. I think everybody knows what I think of quantum computing. I don't even think, I think ultimately it will be a quantum computing is got a spot and it's right next to the metaverse on the ash heap of history. That is my prediction for quantum computing. Because what it is good at is very, very narrow. So even if ultimately they figure out how to do this, which I don't know that they will, what it can do is extremely narrow. So the goal isn't even to take the place of regular computers or supercomputers or, the GPUs, the high performance computing stuff that we're doing right now. That's massive computing power. It's totally different. And so it's not going to, even if they do what they want to do, it's not even meant to replace that. And I don't know, they were talking 10 or 15 years, and I was pretty skeptical about 10 or 15 years. So we'll see what happens. We'll do our next poll on that. We might have to shut this one down, Georgia. I feel like there's kind of we're all over the place. Should we go through the results? Oh, first I want to say, Ricky, member for 36 months. Thank you very much for being a member. How do you feel about the setup for Bitfarms? Do you think it could run after switching to Keel? So I have a bunch of stuff open on that, and Ricky, I will definitely talk about Bitfarms. Maybe right after we finish our quantum computing talk, we'll go and talk about what Bitfarms is doing. And let me put it this way. I have not sold any of my Bitfarms. So that's another one of my positions that I've been holding for years. I have not sold, and I'm done dollar cost averaging in. For a lot of these companies, I've been buying for years. Some of them are newer positions. TeraWulf, CIFR, those are newer positions for me. I will buy in if the opportunity presents itself. And also, if something gets to a price that's just obscenely low and stupidly low, I'll probably not be able to resist dollar cost averaging a little bit more. But for the most part, my Keel position, although we still get to call it Bitfarms for 3 more days, is set and I'm going to keep it, and I got some price targets for it. So we'll definitely talk about that. This poll, what's Bitcoin's next move? So in first place is actually the best case scenario, 67K plus, which means it's going to go up from here. 38% of people feel that it's going to go up from here. 65 to 67. So that is a super tight range. In other words, is it going to just keep going sideways? And that was 38. Oh, sorry. That was 29%. Wait a minute. Sorry. 18%. So that came in third place. The 55 to 65, so that's a pretty healthy leg down. 50, if we break under 60,000, I feel there is a chance we could retest 60,000. So we tested it almost right to the dollar, and so it's certainly never a surprise in whether it's a stock or a cryptocurrency. When something retests a major line, that is not a shocking outcome. I don't think it's going to happen. But I can't sit here and go, wow, I'm shocked we retested 60. If we break and 60 doesn't hold, I will be very surprised. So that's just me personally. But 55 to 65 got 29%. 55,000 or lower got 15%. So that would be a serious move to the downside. And this reflects, if I look at all the articles I've looked at over the last 3 or 4 days, that pretty much reflects where people are at. They're all over the place. So FUD, that uncertainty, I just think it's maxing out right now. The uncertainty is at an absolute peak. And that seems like a bad thing, but it's actually usually a big buying opportunity. Do us a favor and hit the like button so we get in the algorithm and people can get here and find us and join the conversation. People need to.
Quantum computing going to break Bitcoin in the next 15 years.
Oh, that's your poll?
Yeah.
All right, so that is an interesting one.
20, but I think in 15 years there could be maybe something happening after 15 years.
Well, and according to Google, what Google is saying, so let's talk about it for a minute. Let me find that tab. Bitcoin bulls scramble for post-quantum protection as Google drops bombshell paper. This is the kind of language we're getting. Google's findings that break Bitcoin's cryptography require 20 times fewer qubits than previously estimated, has triggered the strongest industry response to quantum threats since the Willow chip in 2024. Here's how builders, investors, and researchers are reacting. And the reality is, so this was March 31st. Before they tell you how people are reacting, here's how people are reacting. And we are just sideways. Right? That was put out on this day. So, right, 1, 2, 3. Those are the days we've had since this report dropped. Not exactly earth-shattering. So that would be my first response. Is that the market's telling you they don't really put too much stock in what Google was saying. I don't know why Google put this report out. And I don't know why people just are rushing it. This is clickbait there's no more news. We should do a poll on that next. The news is dead, in my opinion. You have to do your own research and you got to do a deep dive because the first thing you come across, in my opinion, is almost certainly wrong.
Did you hear me, Tom? The internet's dead.
Yeah, well, the internet is largely responsible, but they're not solely responsible because legacy media, if anything's worse than the internet, it's legacy media. So nobody's saying what's going on. And Google's a multi-trillion-dollar company. They have no reason to put a report out. This is so premature to put something like this out, in my opinion, that I just don't understand. So the paper warns that a sufficiently powerful quantum computer could crack a Bitcoin private key in about 9 minutes. Once a public key is exposed, putting roughly 1/3 of all Bitcoin, or just about 7 million Bitcoin, at heightened risk, especially after upgrades like the Taproot. If you dig into this, the Taproot had to do with having more transparency. So there's the private code and the public code, and you get one of those for free with Taproot. So, but the thing is, at any time, these crypto wallets, and many of them already have upgraded to already, even if they make a 20 million qubit quantum computer, which in my opinion will never happen. So 15 years, my answer to that is never. But even if they did, already we have stuff that's uncrackable. So the question is, can people migrate everything over there between now and the time they can break the transactional code with the wallets? That's what this is all about. It's got nothing to do with the actual blockchain itself. So it's never going to solve blocks, right? It's never going to break that code. No one's even talked about that as a realistic scenario for a couple of reasons. It's just prohibitively impossible. One of which is the existing global Bitcoin network has 10x'd in the last 4.5 years. And it's just so enormous right now that it's the computing power. It would take, at last estimate, if we could get from and understand, they're tinkering around with 4 qubits, 8 qubits. Somebody said, we got 50 qubits. Even this report dropped the number down to 500,000 qubits. I won't even get into what a qubit is, but you can look that up if you're interested. But just understand, they haven't scaled, and they haven't done any of this. It's all in labs, in theory. And I'll bring George's point up for him. So far, the easiest way for them to do this is to get the machine down to just slightly above absolute zero on the Kelvin scale. So the electricity required to do that is insanity. Now, there's a couple other ways with light refraction and some other stuff that they think they may be able to accomplish this. It's all worse. Early days is an overstatement. That's my opinion on what's going on there. But this is what they're talking about. And I'm just going to show you. I mean, this was the news. So that's one headline. Here, Google warns 5 quantum attack paths could put $100 billion of Ethereum at risk. So they're worried about Ethereum as well as Bitcoin. Quantum risk resurfaces at the worst time for Bitcoin. I'm just running through the headlines because these are all repetitive. A quantum computer may need just 10,000. Okay, so now we get to, because what Google put out wasn't far enough, a research paper from Caltech and quantum startup. So understand, this is a research paper from a quantum startup company. So right off the bat, there's a massive conflict of interest in this. A research paper from Caltech and a quantum startup, Oratomic, found that the cryptography protecting Bitcoin and Ether wallets could be broken with as few as 10,000 physical qubits, far below earlier estimates of hundreds of thousands, right? And the earlier estimate of 500,000 is down from what used to be, I think, 10 million was their estimate. Using Google's quantum circuits as a baseline, the authors say a neutral a neutral atom quantum computer with about 26,000 qubits could crack ECC 256, the standard securing major blockchains, in roughly 10 days. So I don't even know what that means, because that doesn't even make sense. While RSA 2048 would require about 102,000 qubits and 3 months. So they need to be more specific about what they're talking about. But I personally, so we can see what you guys think, but I will tell you, as the market has, I have dismissed all of this, because show me, let a quantum computer do one simple thing. Now, be careful, because you're going to go, well, quantum computers have done unbelievable things. I read that they solved something in 10 minutes that would have taken a supercomputer 50 billion years. Well, read the article, because you'll see that is a total hypothetical. They're answering a question that has millions, if not billions, of answers that are correct, and they have no way to verify it. So they do a small, so I don't want to get into it, but those claims are wildly over-exaggerated and not substantiated sufficiently, in my opinion, just to meet the minimum, scientific method standards. So just be careful with quantum computing, I guess, is what I would say. And listen, that doesn't mean all the quantum computing stocks, they could all 10x in the meantime on hype. But I just don't think there's anything behind it. I mean, this goes on. The post-quantum transition can't be postponed any longer. So it's urgent, it's imminent, but it's not. So even these guys go on to say, they're thinking 2029 or 2030. And that is the wildly revised, super fast version of what they're worried about. And then the last one, breaking Bitcoin with quantum may be easier than thought, with Taproot partly to blame, says Google. So I'm just going to leave it alone. But you can see that is just a sampling of the barrage of information that came out. Google puts out a report, and it's like people go into a tailspin. And I would just say, like everything, take it with a grain of salt, put it into its larger context, and I will believe it when I see it. I'll believe it when they show me anything. Gambit Beer doesn't like CoinDesk. CoinDesk is just an aggregator of information. It's much like Yahoo, which I use a lot, CNBC. They aggregate everybody else's info, and that's what people are talking about. So, I mean, and CoinDesk specifically, unlike Yahoo or CNBC, CoinDesk is specifically cryptocurrency. So it's a good spot to get an aggregation of information, but I look all over the place. These are usually just the most concise articles. So that's why sometimes you'll see me go to Coinbase articles. But, I have like all of us, you need to have a lot of different sources. And ultimately, as you're buying a stock, you need to go look at their 10Qs and their 10Ks and read their press releases directly from the source, and to understand what the real picture is. So to me, that's the most important part of due diligence. You can do technical analysis and look at charts, and I'm not dismissing that. I do that myself. But by far, my number one source of information is SEC filings from these companies, because that's what's really going on. People can speculate about anything they want, but once you filed it with the SEC, you are scrutinized. So that information tends to be the highest level of accuracy. I hope we see 30K. That's not me saying that. That is Brett. And Brett is asking, why don't you believe in the 4-year cycle? I can go through that, and I will talk about that, but there's just, I don't believe, I think the 4-year cycle is dwindling away. And this is the first cycle. There's only been 4 of these. So it's not like we have some monumental track record. And I'm going to go to an article and show you what they're talking about, because it goes right to what Brett is talking about. But for me personally, I will tell you, in the first and second halvings, the first 2 4-year cycles, nobody even knew what the hell a Bitcoin was, pardon my French. Right? I mean, let's be honest. 99+% of the population didn't even know what a Bitcoin was or that it existed. So the first 2 cycles were truly just cryptocurrency, first movers, insiders. The volume was minuscule compared to what it is today. So I tend to somewhat dismiss those 2 just for that reason alone. You're looking at the results of a game nobody's playing. So I don't put a lot of stock in that. The last one actually was a much stronger, this is the 2021 cycle I'm talking about. That acted a lot more like the 4-year cycle than I expected it to. I will say it was the smallest pullback we've ever had, but it was still enough of a pullback that you could legitimately call that a crypto winter. I think we had like a 78% pullback. In some ways, that was actually the worst crypto winter because, it's the first time we ever went below the previous cycle high, right? The previous cycle in 2017, we got to over 19,000. In the 2021 cycle, in 2022, we double bottomed at around 15,500. That's lower than the previous cycle. So that's the first time that ever happened. Now, I don't think it's the last time, because I know it's not the last time, because we did the same thing again already in this cycle. We have taken out 69,000. This yellow line right here was untouched for years because we got there in November of 2021 and we didn't get back there until, February or March of 2024. So then we went above it. We went all the way up to 126,000. And now you can see, if I go to the 1 day, this is the high from the previous cycle. That is supposed to be that's like the hard deck. That's supposed to be a hard floor right here that we stay above. Now, this is 2 cycles in a row. We didn't do it. So I don't think it's going to be a surprise anymore that we retest this and maybe it doesn't hold for short periods of time. But more money has moved into Bitcoin in this one cycle, this 4-year cycle, than all the other cycles put together. We have a lot of structural things happening. There's Bitcoin ETFs, and there's another gigantic player that's about to jump into that. So we'll talk about, if I can find it real fast. I think it's this. Morgan Stanley enters Bitcoin ETF race with market-leading low fees. The bank priced its proposed spot Bitcoin fund at 14 basis points. So this is a race to the bottom. A lot of these are at 25 basis points, which is a tiny, tiny fee for an ETF. They're going to do 14 basis points, and Morgan Stanley is one of the big dogs. So this is another giant player moving directly into Bitcoin. By the way, the biggest money manager in the history of the world already has a Bitcoin ETF, and it's the most successful ETF of any kind in the history of all ETFs. So adoption is real, right? That cannot be dismissed. And we also had some good news. Let me see if I can find it. 10 seconds here. Bitcoin ETFs post first monthly inflows since October as price stabilizes. So October, we hit 126,000. That was the new all-time high for Bitcoin. We have been in a 6-month bear market since then. And in that time, we've had monthly outflows after the massive, massive billions of dollars of inflows. We actually had monthly outflows. Well, in the month of September, in the month of March, which just ended, U.S. spot Bitcoin ETFs recorded $1.32 billion in net inflows in March, ending a 4-month streak of outflows. So that 4-month streak of outflows reinforces we're about 6 months into a bear market. ETF holdings dropped just 7.2% at their lowest point. So it's not like there was a mass exodus. They only dropped 7.2% at their lowest point and have since partially recovered, even as the average investor's cost basis remains well above the current price. So all the people that bought recently, obviously, we just peaked at 126,000. We're in the 67,000 range. We're off dramatically. So a lot of people are upside down. But there's some other statistics going on that show we're reaching a point where there's an awful lot of things that are coinciding with what has been the bottom in the past for Bitcoin. So I think there's a massive amount of evidence that the bottom is in. And it's not like we didn't have some cycle. And I said 2 years ago, so if you guys go back and check the tapes, I've been saying for 2 years, I do think we're going to have a bear market. I think we're going to hit a new all-time high, and then we're going to have a crypto/Bitcoin bear market. And that's going to be something like a 40 to 45% retracement. Now, it was worse than I expected. It was 52%. And we don't, if it gets worse, then it gets worse. But you know, we're off of that 52%. That's a serious, right? If the regular markets did that, if the equity markets did that, that would be a full-blown crash. Now, in cryptocurrency, we're used to that. It's the smallest pullback we've ever had in what would be the 4-year cycle. Alexander is saying the 4-year cycle is just the money supply schedule, and today it is breaking. And there's a lot of truth to that. This is the other thing that is new to this cycle. I think we're holding up unbelievably strong, given the Fed's, in my opinion, total failure in the last 3 or 4 years, particularly in the last 1 year. Actually, all of 2022, I think in hindsight, and I had an article, they contradict themselves beyond belief. And it makes me crazy. This inflation's transitory. Anybody that doesn't remember that wasn't investing in 2022, because that's all we heard. Inflation's transitory. That was Jerome Powell's mantra. He said it thousands of times. Well, guess what? It wasn't transitory. It was the worst inflation we've had in almost 50 years. And he left interest rates near zero through half of that period of time. So by the time he started raising rates, ultimately we got the inflation ended, and we still suffer that, because remember, it's not like prices come down after that. They just go up at a slower rate. So when we're in the 2.5% to 3%, which is really historically very much the sweet spot, that's getting inflation under control. It's lower than the 50-year average inflation. So we've been in a sweet spot. The problem is there was a year in the middle where everything spiraled out of control. So the new baseline, has created an affordability issue really all around the world, I think.
All right.
And Dan is saying sour, salty because he lost so much on Mara. I don't know. I know Sour Mountain Gaming, if you're talking about Sour Mountain Gaming, we've talked in the private group, and he's made some very good moves. I don't know if he's been burned on Mara, but I know he's won big on a couple of other things and had some good calls. Listen, I'm wrong on Mara for years now, but I have not. I'm not bailing out, because I don't think the fundamentally things have changed for them. I think their stock is beaten down, and we were supposed to be entering the last cycle we had a blow off top because we had interest rates way down, quantitative easing through the roof. In addition to all of that, Americans were getting checks in the mail from the government. So you add that money supply in, it's all about liquidity and it's all about risk. If interest rates are really high, if you can go get 4% in a money market, you are a lot less likely to put your money at risk, even though there's more upside potentially. If you're getting 1.5% in a money market, there was a time where I had a money market that was getting 0.2% interest. So what do you think my incentive was to keep that money in that money market? It was 0. And that's when people said, let's get our money out of there. And there's almost $7 trillion in money markets right now because they're making money off of them. If that equation switches when Jerome Powell leaves and the Fed becomes, somewhat in the neighborhood of realistic, all of this, in my opinion, changes. So that's the change that's coming. That change in the last cycle already happened. We had the lower interest rates near 0. We had massive quantitative easing. We had checks in the mail. So, we had a bubble in small cap stocks, a massive bubble, and then we had our blow off top in cryptocurrency. And the other thing I'll say is, for altcoins, they're not living the same experience as Bitcoin is. Most of the altcoins, they did have a crypto winter. They are down 75, 80, 85%, some of them more than that. So, the altcoins haven't reached the level of maturity that Bitcoin has, as is evidenced by the fact that, between the ETFs, Microstrategy plans to own 1 million Bitcoin by the end of the year. That is a significant percentage of the supply of Bitcoin. You've got ETFs, which, over the course of years, they may own, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million Bitcoin. That's money. Those are Bitcoin all off, that's out of supply. So the supply demand equation is just going to get better and better because, by the way, we've minted most of the Bitcoin. We're 120 years, I think, away from mining the last Bitcoin, but we've mined 20 million of the 21 million Bitcoin. So the supply is pretty much fixed at this point. It's the demand that's as the demand will go up and the true supply, which will be Bitcoin on chain, is going to continue to get stressed. So yes, they continue to manipulate it in the short term, but do you guys really think they're going to hold that up for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? I don't. And Sour Mountain Gaming, first Friday we haven't been read in a while. So I don't know what the rest of the world was and what markets were open or not. But, we were closed in the U.S. today. For the equity markets, the bond markets were open for a few hours this morning. And if you look at Bitcoin, we are as sideways gets. Like just in the time I switched to this screen, this flipped from red to green. So we're within dollars of being absolutely flat on Bitcoin today, which is fine. And honestly, it's a big win. If Bitcoin can stay flat, this is where I'm at. If Bitcoin can stay flat on Saturday and Sunday, I think next week will be a very good week. There was a lot of noise near the end of this week that, wow, we're going to have 3 days where, the ETFs can't buy, big money can't buy, Bitcoin's going to crash. Look out below 60,000. I saw an article, 50,000. So far today, we haven't moved an inch. We're at basically 67,000. almost exactly flat on the day there. Within the $5 move, we just went from green to red. So we're flat on the day. So that's a good Friday because, it is actually the Good Friday. But that's a good Friday because Fridays have been a sell-off. And in this Friday in particular, there was massive concern because the markets were closed and the ETFs and Microstrategy and everybody else didn't have access to buying Bitcoin, that there was going to be a big drop-off. George, our poll, quantum computers going to break Bitcoin in 15 years. So we have a pretty skeptical crowd. I'm encouraged by that. 26% say yes, and 74% say no. And I guess, break Bitcoin, I just think that's a no. So that's my, what's your vote?
No.
You think no?
No.
No, we're safe. I don't think. And to reframe it a little, I don't think quantum computers times infinity will ever actually solve a block and crack the actual blockchain itself. What we're worried about here is that it's going to solve the encryption on transactions from wallet to wallet. That's the big hype. And, we thought we had 10 or 15 years. Now Google just came out a few days ago and said, it's going to be way faster than that. We proved it out. We're not going to show you our proof. They didn't show the proof because they said it's too dangerous. We can't show it to you. It's too dangerous. But we proved it. And, if A plus B plus C plus D happens, then, they're going to be able to crack the code 40% of the time or whatever it was, which means your transaction's at risk. Ethan is saying dollar up, Bitcoin up. That's another indication that Bitcoin has been very strong. I think the last 60 days have been extremely strong for Bitcoin because let's go to that because I think that's a very interesting chart. Here's the DXY, right? We're revisiting this high here was back in August of 2025. So, and you can't even see, where's my, oh, did I change my green line? Yeah, I changed my green line to red, I think. Oh, no, I just wasn't up high enough. This line at 103.79, this was prior to us crushing it for a couple of years. This was a 20-year high in strength of the US dollar. So we're now trading inside of this range. Well, now we broke out of the top of this range and we seem to be bouncing in between, 99 and 100, a very tight range. But historically speaking, understand, this still is very near. Like if you go back in the charts, I got a line down here at 88. Like that's low. 90's normal. 92 is normal. 99 or 100 is an extremely strong dollar. The theory is dollar strong, Bitcoin bad. Well, that has not happened. In this run up, Bitcoin's totally sideways. So it has not hurt Bitcoin at all. Alexander's saying the petrodollar is doomed. I think the opposite is true. I think that at the end of this conflict, we will have made massive progress in solidifying the petrodollar. People are going to have all kinds of thoughts on that, and we're in the middle of a conflict, and we don't really know exactly how it's going to end. So how that ends is going to dictate the answer to that question, but it's a valid question. What's going on right now is going to affect the petrodollar one way or the other. I think it will end up being a very positive influence on that. That's my opinion.
I think the petrodollar is going to get extremely strong again.
So I agree. That's what I think is going to be the result of all of this, because all of these companies or countries that we're talking about, well, we're going to trade oil in bricks, you know, that's unwinding. That looks like it's failing. And, you know, there have been some big steps in the opposite direction in the last few months. And depending on how this situation is resolved, I think this is going to be a big step in the opposite direction. Now, if it resolves differently than I expect, maybe that would change the situation. The dollar strengthening means pressure on risk assets. Bitcoin is not an exception. The rally comes after, not instead. Bitcoin is just, my answer to that is, because I understand what Brett is saying is actually, you know, as a general rule, that is correct. Bitcoin's an anomaly. The world has not known Bitcoin. This is the first. Cryptocurrency is now a new segment of the market. This hasn't happened in a long, long time. And cryptocurrency has a lot of things that are very unique about it. And, you know, it's a commodity. Is it risk on? Is it risk off? It's a hybrid right now. And depending on a multitude of other factors that are going on, sometimes it acts like a risk on asset, and sometimes it acts like a risk off asset. In the long term, by the way, the thesis for Bitcoin is that it's the ultimate risk off asset. It's a store of value. It's going to be competing with gold, maybe passing gold someday, 20 or 50 years from now. That's the long range thesis, is that this will be the ultimate example of a risk off asset. But, you know, to Brett's point, currently it acts like both. It just depends on the day. There's some times where this 100% acts like a risk on asset. So that is true. But there's other days it doesn't. And we see the trend, you know, it's very hard to predict. So that's just one. This is what I always like to say. That is one data point in a sea of data points. And you have to look at all of them to try to make what still is only your best guess on what's coming. And short-term guesses have proven to be just foolish. It's been almost impossible to predict short-term on really the whole market. Doesn't work like it used to. Right? I'll give you an example, totally unrelated to all of this. Prior to earnings, I think 2 or 3 days ago, Nike was down 70% in a 5-year window from its all-time high. Nike was a Dow stock. It's a blue chip stock. It was down 70%. That kind of stuff did not used to happen. But what's worse is, being down 70%, they reported earnings. The earnings were just fine. They were a little weak on guidance, and they tanked 15% in one day. Nike. That's a blue chip stock where a 2% move in one day. This is, you know, for people that don't remember, like for the 30 stocks in the Dow, a 2 or 3% move in one day was like massive. Now you just got a 15% move to the downside on a stock that was already down 70%. Now don't add those together. That doesn't equal 85% because it's down 15% off of a price that's already down 70%. So I think it's about down 75% off of its high now. So I'm not buying any Nike. I don't see that narrative changing anytime soon. Nike has been out of favor in a way like I've seen very few times in history. But my point is, nothing acts rationally anymore. And so it just makes it, relying on any old school rule of thumb, I feel like you got to do more and more due diligence, look at more and more of the picture, and have a higher level of conviction.
Wow, we got a lot of comments. I don't even know which one to take first. I think Katie's the easiest one. Hit the like button. We're up to 53 likes, Tom.
All right, let's smash the like button. That's not bad for a day the market's closed. So thank you, everybody. If you just got here or if you haven't yet, if you could do us a big favor and smash the like button, it does help the stream out, especially on today, a day off in the market. But Bitcoin never sleeps, and that's why we're here. And welcome to the stream, Katie.
And so, Dave, to answer your question, the reason I said to buy STRC is I have like two pools of money in the way I think about money. One, I think of it as a return and like very low risk. I don't want to lose anything, right? And then stock, which is more of a high risk. And I think when you're guaranteed 11% return on that STRC, that to me is like putting money in a savings account. So that's why I like it.
I think they both represent different opportunities. And right, I'll let you keep going, George, but I think that's spot on.
But buying the stock, right now, that to me, that's more risky than it is. Like, I have a theory. It was like there's so much money that you have to have in life to live on, and I can't afford to lose that money. So if I lose that money, then I can't pay my bills. And to think that you could take and just say $100,000 and get $11,000, $1,000 each month, and still have the principal, it's a very low risk way of doing that. Or you could go with Grant Cardone and get the 25%.
Yeah, good luck. It's an amazing return on investment, and MicroStrategy has been absolutely dedicated to basically keeping it at par. If that means raising the interest rate even more, they're doing whatever it takes to keep it at par. So, right now, anything could break at any time. But to George's point, I mean, if he's got, just for the sake of argument, if anybody has $10,000 sitting in a money market making 3.5%, they're scratching their head going, you know what? I can make 11.5% on STRC, and they feel like a similar risk. Now, are they? Because your money in the bank is FDIC insured, up to a certain dollar amount, and this is not. But I think it would take a financial catastrophic nightmare for STRC not to stay somewhere around par, and for this interest rate to stay 10% or more in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months. So maybe a year and a half from now, maybe that won't be a good spot for it. I'm in MicroStrategy, so it's funny. George is in the STRC. I'm taking the bigger risk versus the automatic reward. And, I opened a position in MicroStrategy. But for me, I sold MicroStrategy at $350. So I bought it back at $110. I feel like that's an opportunity. So I feel like for me, and I don't do a massive amount of swing trading on stocks, but that represented a golden opportunity. So that's what I did with that. But there's an argument to be made for holding one, the other, or both. Oh, Dave, I bought, I'm calling it MicroStrategy, but it's strategy. And I bought MSTR. So I did buy, the common stock. And I think, if I go look, I got this, their MNAV is 1.13 I think an absolute floor for strategy is 1.0. So they used to be over 3, which means their stock could triple from right now to get back to the MNAV they used to trade at. I don't think they're ever getting back to 3, but I think they could easily get back to 1.5. They might get back to 2. And if that happens, it's probably because it's a Bitcoin bull market. So it's a multiplying effect. You're going to get the upside from the Bitcoin they hold plus the increase in their MNAV. So to me, I think there's a lot of upside there. When that hit $110, it just felt like a bottom to me. And so, it's hardly my biggest investment, but I think that's going to be a winner. It may not be the biggest winner out of everything, but, I like to spread it around a little and distribute the risk.
I put a new poll up. Somebody asked, I don't know who it was, but will Bitcoin break the high of 126 this year?
That is going to tell us where sentiment really is. And at the moment, we're 50-50.
Yes, it will. I think that, again, we're in the middle of this first half of hell of this year. And this is exactly, remember, I said this is going to be the tale of 2 years. And this is shaping up to be exactly like I thought it was going to be, Tom. I don't know if it's any shock to you.
You were saying that even before the year started. You thought the first half of this year was going to be awful, and the second half of this year was going to be at least good, if not very good or better.
In the United States, after 2026, 2027 and 2028, so much money is being poured into this country. I just think that it's going to be crazy, Tom.
I'm very optimistic about the stock market. I think we have something suppressing it. We just had, and it's very healthy for, even though it's for an awful reason, which is a military conflict. It allowed all of the major indexes to have a 10% pullback or more, 10 to 12%, which is an official correction. And the market is going to have corrections, period. History tells us there's never been a year without a correction. So we just got our correction. And I think once we get some more clarity on how this situation in the Middle East resolves itself, I think that's the last stumbling block to a lot of money pouring into the market. So, and I don't think that's too far away. And is it 2 weeks away? Is it 4 weeks away? Is it 6 weeks away? That's why I'm saying short-term guessing is tricky business. I have no idea. And you know what? Even Donald Trump doesn't have any idea, no matter what he says. He doesn't know if he's 2 weeks away or 5 weeks away from the end of whatever they need to do. But I will say this, it is my personal opinion that the administration has made one determination. They are dedicated, whether this goes perfectly as planned or they fail to achieve their objectives, they're going to get out in a short period of time. So 3 months from now, this is not going to be going on, in my opinion, because there was... Go ahead, George.
There's 2 things that you mentioned, Tom, and without even mentioning it. Clarity. The Clarity Act. The Clarity Act is going to get passed, and I would imagine it's going to get passed sooner than later. I would imagine before the first half of this year, it will get passed.
Let me see.
What people aren't even talking about is that opens up 401k money, and that's the game changer. It's so funny how sentiment can change so quickly because we're in the grips of hell in the pricing for BTC right now. And then all of a sudden, boom, 401ks 60 days away from whenever that is. I mean, there is just so much money that's coming into crypto that people just don't realize. And the adoption then takes off. We have to, and then there's another little carrot out there, and that's the strategic reserve. However that sets up, whether they acquire what they've already done, or whether
Bitcoin number 1 hasn't even been put into that yet. So you're right, 100% of that is ahead.
And we forget all about that. And at some point in time, And I think that's going to be before the midterm.
So I got an article on that for what it's worth. And yes, it is from CoinDesk. Crypto market structure bill release pushed back as industries view revised stablecoin yield compromise this week. So this is actually, to me, a good article. Crypto and banking industry representatives are viewing revised stablecoin yield compromise language this week. The entire Clarity Act is based on agreeing on this language. And understand, the cryptocurrency companies and the banks are looking at this language. They have lobbies. They are going to apply pressure, but they don't make the final decision. So right now, and from all accounts, you're going to see representatives of the crypto and banking industry are meeting with legislative staffers on Thursday and Friday to review revised compromise language on stablecoin yield provisions in the market structure bill. 3 people familiar with the plans told CoinDesk. Industry representatives first viewed the compromise language spearheaded by senators, a Democrat and a Republican. So it's bipartisan bill that's being introduced. At the time, the proposed compromise banned yield based solely on stablecoin balances, but did allow companies to pay out yield based on activities. The crypto industry has some issues with the language. The text was originally expected to be released this week, but now that is now unlikely, and it's essentially because, let's see, an individual familiar with CoinDesk earlier this week that portions of the language were still being negotiated. So they are in the absolute final stages of negotiating the absolute last thing that is holding up this bill. Another person told CoinDesk late last week that some of the crypto industry desired changes were largely technical tweaks to clarify the details. So it's not even like they're on a different page. They just want to bring a little more clarity to the Clarity Act rather than substantive changes around the treatment of yield. So they're not, this is super close to a done deal. I think we were hoping it was going to get done in April. This probably pushes it back. They're talking about later in April, but I think, it could be more likely in May. But I do think this will get passed, and I think it's critical that this gets passed before the midterms, because once we get, and before we get into election season, so by June, July, everything is starting to change. Congress doesn't want to do anything because they're waiting to see what happens in the election. So this has got to go through in the next, 75 days, in my opinion. And it is a big deal.
Tom, where was the number one place that you and I ate in college?
In college?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. I mean, I can think of a bunch of things. Most of them are fast food.
Right. I know. You're in the right spot.
I mean, the first thing that pops into my head is McDonald's.
Bingo. There it is. Yeah. We eat there all the time.
We frequent flyer miles at McDonald's, no doubt about it. What about the meat at McDonald's?
I'm not saying you go to TikTok and run a read. I'm not telling you nothing.
Go judge for yourself. I indulge in McDonald's from time to time.
So listen
to this day.
When we were going there, the fries were cooked in beef tallow.
Yes, that is true.
They changed that. See, they weren't bad for you. I knew they weren't bad for you.
One of the reasons they got in big trouble in India. Because,
really?
Right there, fries sound vegetarian/vegan, but when they're cooked in beef tallow, they're not. My go-to meal at McDonald's used to be, well, it's changed. It used to be they had 2 burgers and a 10-piece McNugget. That used to be my go-to. Now it's a quarter pounder.
You want? I called mine was around the world. I don't know why I call it around the world, but I would get a chicken sandwich. I would get a hamburger, usually doubles, and then I would get a fish sandwich, and I would eat around the world.
That
was my
covers
thing.
all the bases. And I bet you,
Yeah.
George, if you think about it, you could tell everybody the two sauces that I got every time.
Hot mustard and honey.
That's right. That's my go-to.
Those are awesome. Those two belong together.
It is. That's what I would do. Dip my McNuggets in both. And that was gold. I'm not sure there's any actual meat in a McNugget, but they did taste good.
No one cooks anymore, Katie. No one cooks. I did a thing and I stopped doing it. So I was trying to get I officially kick off my yak tomorrow, by the way. But I was doing a thing every week. I'd go shopping for a family of 4 for $100, and every week I fed them. And that's what's crazy is people don't realize that you can still do that. It takes some work, but you can do that.
Salmon Gaming is saying that meal will set you back about $50. Oh, trust me, I eat out too much, and you're right, Katie. The world still is eating out and eating fast food, but I'm every time, and I know, and yet every time I go pay, I'm shocked. I cannot believe how expensive fast food is.
You know what's funny, Sour, is basically fast food and like good food, quote unquote, is about the same. It's
right.
Like a few dollars more, if anything.
There's times where I will go to, like, let's say, not to single anybody out, but like a Chick-fil-A or a Culver's.
Well, that's still fast food.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'll go to and when I'm done, if I do the math, I could have bought everybody a steak, a New York strip for dinner.
Wow, yeah. It's
for
crazy,
the same price. It's insanity.
That's the thing that bothers me right now is that this groceries have just gone through the roof. They were coming down for a minute and then they went nuts again.
Yeah, and meat costs a lot of money, and I could still buy steaks for everybody with the cost of fast food.
We got a little off topic. How's our poll looking, Tom?
50-50. Exactly 50-50. Will Bitcoin break the high of 2026? See, but these polls are great. Once again, FUD. The U in FUD is uncertainty. And does it get any more uncertain than a exactly 50-50 poll? Now we just have one vote against breaking the tie. 50-50 on whether or not Bitcoin's going to get back to its all-time high. That's the definition of uncertainty. So I think those are, in the past. And let's take a look. I got to refresh this. We're at 9 on the Fear and Greed Index, on the Crypto Fear and Greed Index. But I want to point out, if you zoom out to 1 year, that's where you can really see it. If you zoom out to 1 year, if you go right here, on February 12th, we were at 5 on the Crypto Fear and Greed Index, tying the worst score in history. On a few weeks later, on February 23rd, we were at 5 again. That's a double bottom at 5 in the month of February. That coincides with when we flash crashed down to 60,000. And to me, like, you start to add all the pieces of the puzzle together and things start to support. Now, we're still in fear, but this is when you buy. You don't, by the time we're up here in extreme greed, I got news for everybody. You better be selling at that point, because this is not where money is made on the buying side. This is. And then you got to wait for it. And you don't know how long you're going to wait. Are you going to wait a month? Are you going to wait 6 months? Is it going to take a year or two? Right? Nobody can answer that question. But historically speaking, if you buy at 9 and sell at 80, you are minting money. Just by the nature of how this index works. Right? You don't want to be buying at max FOMO. And this can get to 90. So
I think next time I should play it exactly the way the fear and greed reads.
I mean, it's clockwork. Doug's saying, I barely eat out, too expensive, and quality not that good. True and true, Doug. I agree. Let's get to a few things, because I haven't gotten to a lot of what we were even going to talk about. Let's start right here. Bitfarms targets 0 Bitcoin on the balance sheet as it pivots to AI. So this was on March 31st, and this was Bitfarms. So a couple of things going on with Bitfarms this week. Big week for Bitfarms. Number one, they announced, that's it. We're selling all our Bitcoin. I think they still have 1,800 Bitcoin left. They said they're going to opportunistically sell their Bitcoin, which means they're not going to dump it all at 67,000. But they do expect to sell it all this year. They are shifting completely to AI. And they're going to be out of Bitcoin mining. Bitfarms will not be a Bitcoin miner. In addition to not being a Bitcoin miner, they're not even going to be Bitfarms anymore. Because Bitfarms officially rebrands as Keel Infrastructure, completes U.S. redomiciliation. So this was on April Fool's Day, April 1st, 2 days ago. Keel Infrastructure, well-positioned to provide the crucial foundation that will enable AI platforms to deploy compute on time and at scale. They're all in on high-performance computing data centers. This is who they are now. They will not be a Bitcoin miner. The rebrand is more than... Go ahead.
You can have some really good fun with that name, by the way. You know, that Keel equals heel, right?
Yes. Rhymes with...
If you recall correctly, they could not find the holes to plug the machines in. Whether they're AI or Bitcoin miners, they need to find the holes to plug the machines in.
But I am confident that they have a plan. It is a totally different plan than it was a year ago. So I grant you that. But I think they were, for several reasons, including one of the most ill-advised, ill-fated, hostile takeover attempts in the history of the stock market, in my opinion. I like Riot stock. I own Riot stock. I think they have a huge amount of upside. I'm going to go through. They put out a report today and gave us some information. But whatever they thought they were doing with Bitfarms was absurd. And we called that from day one, that there was a 0% chance that was going to happen. No good came from it for Riot. And it was disastrous for Bitfarms. And you could say, well, they put their competition out of business, but Bitfarms really isn't their competition. The competition for any of these companies is the global hash rate. And
do they have money?
Yeah, Bitfarms has like $500 million, including their Bitcoin.
And what's their burn rate?
Well, they're going to go through, they have a massive, their burn rate from operations is very small, but they have a massive amount of infrastructure to build out.
Are they going to have to do a ATM?
They're going to most likely either get a secured loan or do some convertible debt. That's my best estimation, and that's just a guess. But they have about $500 million. That's not going to get them where they're going. So they are going to need to raise money. But I do think they will be trading on Monday. They will be trading under stock ticker KEEL, Keel, as a U.S. company. Now, don't expect day one for this thing to skyrocket as a result of that. But I think over the next 30, 60, 90 days, the trillions of dollars of money that's been on the sidelines because this was not a U.S. company, we don't need all of it to move in. We need a little bit to move in to bump this up. And the goal is to get this stock to $5. So
I know. I just what a terrible name.
Keel.
It's just gonna be. You think shit farms are bad?
Oh
well,
boy.
Wait till Keel opens up.
Keel and Peel.
Oh, Keel and Peel.
Oh, we flipped. We flipped from even, then no was ahead. Now yes is ahead. Do us a favor, vote in the poll, and if you would be so kind as to hit the like button. Where are we at, George?
57.
Oh, we're stalled out. I don't know if we can get to 100.
61.
Thank you, everybody. So if you go to Bitfarms, it's now this. So
Remember
Keel.
Cash and Tango? Sorry, go on.
Keel, this is their homepage. Powering. Keel Infrastructure, headquartered in New York City, is a pure play developer and owner addressing energy capacity constraints. Not a word about Bitcoin. High performance computing AI platforms in the world to deploy compute faster and at scale. So they have disassociated themselves 100% from Bitcoin mining based on what the hostile takeover attempt did to their stock. I think they were forced into this plan. I think they actually did a good job of pivoting in real time and coming up with a new plan that it has a much better chance of success, because this stock was down at 68 cents. They simply could not raise money. Thankfully, they did not do massive dilution. At 68 cents, this is ridiculous. Right? This is around a $2 stock right now, so that's more than triple. So you just couldn't do convertible debt at that number. You couldn't do an at-the-market offering at that number. They were just stuck. So this is how they've come out of it. And then if you hit investors, investor overview. And now I'll scroll down and show you their little, see, they're counting up. 341 megawatts already energized. 430 megawatts secured capacity past to 341. And then this is where it gets a little iffy. Another 1.5 gigawatts expansion capacity. Now, I remain skeptical about this 1.5, but this 770 megawatts, this is real. They're hoping to get to 2.2 gigawatts. We'll see if they can do that over the next 2-3 years. 2 gigawatts is the magic number in my mind. All these companies are targeting 2 or 3 or 4 gigawatts. Some are looking for even more than that to get in, to be considered a big player in this space and to be taken seriously. So that's their chance to succeed. It is not a coincidence that they used this 1.5 to bump themselves up to 2.2, because they know what the market knows, which is this is the number that people are looking for. They want, right? If they're gonna start installing machines and making a relationship, they don't want it to cap out. So they need to see growth.
Because we have no direction and we're stuck in the ocean. First, what was it? What did they do before Bitcoin mining?
Bitfarms?
Yeah.
Bitfarms has been Bitcoin mining for a long time. The companies that really made a major switch, CleanSpark, didn't get into Bitcoin mining until December of 2020. Marathon, remember, Marathon used to be called Marathon Patent Group. They specialized in acquiring patents and seeing if they would appreciate. Doug, thank you for the super chat. Big tipper here. Thank you very much. Hey, listen, it's much appreciated. Times are tough. Gambit Beer said Hut has lost its spark. So Hut has a number that, a similar format. Hut's number right here is 5 gigawatts. And I just think you're out ahead of your skis at that point. It's like 5 gigawatts of what? They don't own any of it. They don't have contractual rights to any of it. It's just stuff they're looking at and considering. So I take these two top numbers a lot more seriously than I take this number. And I don't like that Hut, they say they're going to be at 8 gigawatts, but 5 of them are stuff they are not associated with in any way, shape, or form right now, as far as I can tell. We're at 51 to 49. Should I end this poll, George?
Yeah.
I think there's a good reason this poll is a dead heat. I am highly confident that we will get back over 100,000. I think if you had said 100, this would have been a majorly different poll. I think we will be breaking the all-time high this year, but I understand why people have a lot less confidence about that. It'd be interesting. Want to do a quick 100,000 and see if that changes? I mean, this is straight up.
I'm so disappointed
in the 50-50-ness of this.
Yeah.
You were hoping for a winner? Or you were hoping for optimism, or you were hoping for pessimism?
Yeah.
Oh, Gambit Beer, I gotcha. Yeah, that's true. All right, 50-50. Boom. I'm ending it. That's it. 50-50. I say yes. You said yes, George, I think.
Yes.
I feel like what George has been talking about is how things are going to play out. This feels like misery so far this year, but
we're doing a good job.
That decision was rendered, and George called it before it even started, and it's playing out that way. But I do think the second half of your prediction is going to be correct as well, barring some other catastrophic event. I know, we got geopolitical stuff going on in the Middle East that's dominating the market. It's dominating. I want to show you one thing that to me is just stupid. Look at oil.
By the way, guys, you might hate me, but I'm thinking about becoming an advocate against, I don't even want to tell you this.
Oh, boy.
An advocate against data centers.
Well, good luck.
Sorry. I think at least they're not as bad as freaking solar farms.
Yeah, not as bad. Go look at the math on solar and wind, particularly wind. It's not what people think, and it's shocking. I won't have that debate.
What got me was when you told me about the concrete. I never even thought about it.
It's insanity. The infrastructure required to create one wind farm uses so much oil. You would get more yield out of just straight using the oil than you do out of building the facilities. There's just no sense to it. And everybody knows it. Just like everybody knew ethanol was a joke. The ethanol trade, any company that was ethanol related, by 2005, their stock was at or near zero. Yet, we had 13 years left of government subsidies into ethanol. Everybody already knew with certainty ethanol was a loser and it was going to go away completely, which it did. I think there's still some less than 10% type of thing in some out there, but there's no ethanol company that survived publicly traded. They're all gone, and we did not switch to ethanol, and we're not going to switch to ethanol because the math didn't work on that either. And everybody knew it a decade before we stopped funding it. And the same thing is going on right now with some other sources. And this is probably making a lot of people angry. I'm practical and pragmatic. I would love to have better energy sources, cheaper energy sources, renewable energy sources, but we got to get better at this stuff. Like I'll give you an example. Water, hydropower is awesome. It's awesome. And we are using hydropower massively. So there is a renewable energy source that I am 100% behind. I just can't get behind the ones that I know don't work. They just don't work.
And did you know what percentage of, well, I don't know if that's true. They're trying to say that alternative power is going to account for 40% of consumption next year.
No, not even in the neighborhood of correct. That is wildly inaccurate.
You know what they're doing? I bet you they're taking an aggregate amount and then doing something crazy. You know what I mean?
I don't know what they're doing. That number's not close. I mean, wind and solar are still in low single digits. IREN is asking, what's your view on Mara selling Bitcoin to cover their debt and moving more towards the data center approach? Two parts to that question. I applaud them being better late than never. They're the last ones in on diversifying into data centers. They're not abandoning Bitcoin. They're still one of they're the second biggest Bitcoin miner. So it's not like they're abandoning Bitcoin, but they have got to diversify. They've got to get into these data centers. And so I applaud that. As for paying off 0% convertible debt that's not due for 4 and 5 years by selling Bitcoin at its low, I guess that says everything I need to say about what I think about that. Let's just say that was a buy high, sell low strategy, which I frown upon greatly. There was just no reason. I can't understand. Somebody's got to tell me a reason. They need a press release that said such and such a deal was contingent on us, freeing up that potential dilution on our balance sheet. And we're going to do this giant deal, but we had to do this first. Unless there's something specific, to me, that was ridiculous. Why not wait 75 days? What if Bitcoin's 100,000 75 days from now and they sold 13,000 Bitcoin at 60-something thousand instead? There's just no sense to it.
The only thing I can think of, Tom, is they were trying to tank Bitcoin.
Maybe they were trying to.
69 likes.
Well, we're getting there, but we're running out of runway. If you haven't yet and you're willing to, smash the like button. It helps the stream live. It helps the stream after. It helps the channel. Katie's saying hydro is too expensive. It depends. There are places where the hydro energy, they are actually selling it at pennies on the dollar because it's either that or it just goes to waste. So it depends where the hydro is. There's a lot of hydropower on this earth. There's some places where it's not practical and it makes no sense. But there's other places where it's just going to waste right now. It's almost free energy, free money. Sour Mountain Gaming with a bitter take on the industry. Miners diluted billions from investors. Almost everyone lost money mining, then switched to AI focus. CEOs got rich, That's all that happened the last 4 years. Period. Train wreck. Harsh. Ouch. I think some of these companies did a good job, and I understand that sentiment, Sour Melon Gaming. There's a bunch of these companies where, first of all, if you take the average pay of a CEO, and a lot of this is in stock, understand, this is not cash money going out the door, but still, they're one of the most highly compensated groups, and this is a very small market sector. So, yeah, I totally agree. They're overcompensated. I don't think it's affecting performance. I'm more focused on, are they executing their plan to succeed? And when I look at a company like IREN, for instance, or CleanSpark, a lot of people complain about CleanSpark's C-suite, compensation. They complain that they bought a jet. I don't care about either of those things if they continue to properly execute their business strategy. Because then their stock, which is being suppressed, right? Marathon, Riot, CleanSpark, those are some of the most shorted stocks in the whole stock market. The whole sector right now is oversold because now they're piling on nonsensical FUD that AI isn't real and the AI hype is nonsense. So there was a gigantic AI sell-off all the way from NVIDIA, which has lost, I think, $700 billion in market cap. That's 10 times more than all these companies were at their peak put together, is what NVIDIA's lost in market cap in the last 6 months. So there's FUD out there in the short term around AI. I think it's ridiculous. Anybody that thinks AI is in a bubble right now isn't looking. They're just making a statement. Just look at PE ratios, look at underlying balance sheets and income statements. It's not a bubble. It's just not. A bubble has a definition, and this is not it. So,
Tom, you want to hear something cool?
Absolutely.
On Sunday, our little town here, we're dropping 30,000 Easter eggs
From the
helicopter.
Get out of here.
I'm dead serious.
That sounds dangerous.
I know.
I would stay inside.
You're not going to drive around the city and drop them. I'm sure it's just in the park.
Okay, well, that makes me feel a little better. Anyway, oil, other than this one day where it spiked on panic, oil is at historically high levels. We're at $112 a barrel. And you can see.
You want to hear something funny about that? Everybody was making a big deal about how somebody put this $150 billion short on oil. Immediately oil went down. Remember, last Monday?
Yes.
Yeah, but that didn't last long. It went up. So they've had to put more money in to cover it.
That's right. Oil's at 112. And by the way, in March of 2022, not that long ago, oil was at $130. So this does happen. Oh. Now, oil went negative at one point. So oil can be all over the place. But healthy oil, you can see where healthy oil is long term. I mean, we did dip down. This says to zero, but it actually went dramatically negative for one day. But you can see between $42 and $65, some of those numbers are better than others, but anything in that range is very healthy oil. We got ourselves into that range. And, now 20% of the world's oil is being held up. And this is the panic button that's being pressed. I don't think this is warranted. And, oil trades in a very complicated way as far as the physical oil itself from the companies that need it, that distribute it, that go where it ends up at the gas station. They are buying future contracts out 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months. So it's an extremely complex, but the spot price is just skyrocketing. And I think this is going to come back down substantially, but it could hang out here for a month. There's no doubt about it. Oil at $112 is not good. It's just bad for everybody everywhere.
It's funny because I was gonna buy a well, but I'm like, oil's never going back up. Little did I know.
Well, I would not count on oil being over $100 for an extended period of time. I don't know where it may spike to on any given bad news on any given day, but I think you'll see history shows these situations have a way of resolving themselves one way or the other. And, you know, from the U.S.'s perspective, we're hitting the highest level of oil output in our history, not to mention natural gas, not to mention the situation in South America that's freed up and dramatically increased. You're going to see a dramatic increase in production in oil in South America, because that's one of the largest reserves in the world, and all of the equipment was decayed and in a shambles. They were getting somewhere between 10 and 15% efficiency out of their wells. When big money comes into that and gets that up to 80 or 90%, is going to be a monumental increase in the supply of oil. So there's a lot of good news coming for oil in the next 2 years. There's a very high, strenuous situation in the next 30 days. So short-term oil, no idea. Long-term, I feel like we could easily get back to $45 a barrel.
I meant to put in cost 115. Oh, and don't forget, how much money does it cost for 1 barrel? That's 55 gallons of oil in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, for them to mine it, and right, it's a pittance. It's tiny.
$2. It costs $30 to run their whole government.
Yeah, so they mint money. Now at the moment, their oil is at a standstill.
Good.
Well, there's some short-term pain going on. I hope we come out of this, the other side of this, in a better situation. I try to be realistically optimistic, and I see a pretty clear path to sometime in the next 30 to 60 days, this being a dramatically better situation. You what?
When we were doing our thing, the first poll I did, I said it would be around 60 days. You thought I was crazy. You thought 30 days.
I did. I thought it would be faster, but it's they've come out and, the president gave a speech. He said 2 or 3 more weeks. So what does 2 or 3 more weeks mean? Who knows? Does it mean 2 weeks? Does it mean 3 weeks? Does it mean 6 weeks? Any of those things are obviously still on the table. But I do think they are dedicated at some point, even if they haven't checked every single box they went over there to check, they are going to get out, because the midterms are coming, and there is no way that we can be in the middle of a forever war in the middle of the elections. That's a formula for the Republicans. They might as well not even bother. It's game over. So I think you can pretty much put it in the bank that this will be a distant memory. And remember, we live in a hyper news cycle. So however gigantic this issue is today, if we can put it in the rearview mirror, things disappear fast. Katie feels like oil's going to stay up for a while, and she put money on it.
hang on. It says a barrel of oil is either 42 or 55. While 55 steel drum are commonly used for transportation petroleum products, 42 is crude oil.
So crude's 42.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
What country owns 18% of the world's oil?
What company?
Country.
What country? I mean, there's two front runners. It's either got to be, well, there's three. I think the United States, Saudi Arabia, Russia. Did I miss it?
Yes.
I did?
Let's put it this way. We're in control of it, and it controls 18% of the global reserve.
Argentina.
You got it, Bart.
Yeah, that's.
Don't call for me, Valentine.
This is what I'm saying. And they have monumental reserves, and their equipment's in disarray. They're not pumping a tenth of the oil that they could be out of there. So we have a new arrangement, and I mean, that's done. You want to talk about the news cycle moving fast? Right, that's the second largest or largest reserve of oil in the world, and that went from a disaster chaos to there's now a full financial relationship with big oil to pump all that oil and get it out into the supply in the world. So boom, just like that. That's how fast things change. And nobody's talking about it. And it's not priced into the oil. Oil's skyrocketing. And I understand, right? A lot of oil goes through the strait, but.
Damn it. I don't think the Epstein files are going away anytime soon, personally. I think getting rid of Payne Bondi was needed. I have a feeling that's going to rear its ugly head. I mean, I don't know if people really want to know what's going on. Personally, I do,
Venezuela. Thank you, Gambit Beer. I think I was saying Argentina, but it's Venezuela.
Venezuela, that's what I meant, Venezuela. I think that you're right. I think they don't want the attention on the Epstein list. And I think it's a stain on America that needs to be gone through. And I actually talked to Tom off record on this stuff. And I think I narrowed it down, how it all came to be. You guys might say the wrong person, but who is the biggest perv that was president? Not including the current one. I'm not saying he is, but who was the biggest perv? Let's put it this way. He lost his law license.
Who was I think that's a subjective question.
Well, not too many people lost their law license. Only one that I know of.
Listen, as the way I remember it, he did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Do you guys ever pay attention to Scientology at all? So I watched this guy named.
I would love to follow your line in your brain from here to there. Go ahead.
No, I just Epstein, problems with that. I don't know. I am like a Hulk. What is it? Hogan hero.
Hogan, I know nothing.
I know nothing. I know nothing. I'm just an idiot talking on the radio that bought XRP too expensive. Well, I bought it cheap.
Yeah, you're still way up on XRP. I don't want to hear it. I actually bought some more XRP, and I also bought some Microsoft.
Oh, you did? You did buy that?
I bought Microsoft, and I added to my SoFi position, which is a longer-term position for me.
Tom, do you think the stock market will finish higher than it currently is right now before the end of the year?
Absolutely. And I think people are going to be surprised at the run the stock market takes by the time this year is over.
Do you think it hits a new high?
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. And do you think it will hit another new high next year?
I'm actually much more confident that the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ will hit a new all-time high this year than I am that Bitcoin will hit a new all-time high. And I'm fairly confident Bitcoin will. But I'm extremely confident the NASDAQ and the S&P will.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I think hopefully someday we'll be pleasantly surprised again.
Ken bought some BitDeer. I did a bunch of dollar cost averaging into BitDeer. I have rounded out a nice position in that, and I think that one is on sale. It's not as on sale as it was. Let's take a look real quick. Go to BitDeer. This doesn't look dramatic, but it is because...
Who thinks we're going to the moon? Isn't that crazy? We can only go around the moon. We can't go on the moon.
We're going to, hey, at least...
Isn't it funny? It happened on April 1st. I thought that was... Tell me we don't have a sense of humor, guys.
Hey, that's a big deal. We haven't... It's been 50 years. Some people I know out there are saying that it never happened.
Yeah, never.
That's everybody's own personal opinion on that matter. Well, but if it did happen, it was 50 years ago.
If it did happen, the footage that we see is fake.
Sourmelon saying, Tom, I wish I shared that optimism, especially with the midterms. And to go back to BitDeer, BitDeer's up 35% from March 9th to April 2nd, less than 1 month. So BitDeer bottomed out and it's had a nice run, but you can see it hasn't even really started running. Look at BitDeer. I mean, this was not ancient history. This yellow line was October of 2025 when Bitcoin was at its all-time high. BitDeer's trading at $9. It was at $27. That's a triple 5 months ago. So I think there's a lot of upside to a lot of these stocks if Bitcoin runs and BitDeer is executing. They are now the largest Bitcoin miner. They're big. They have more exahash and they mine more Bitcoin than Marathon. So, they went from, 9th or 10th place to 1st place in 2 years. They make their own machines. And past that, they are getting into the data center business as well. And they are building that out. So I like everything that's happening at BitDeer. I don't know why this stock is as low as it is. I still like it at 9. I bought some at 8 like a week ago. You can see it was at $7.88 a week ago. I got some at like $8 and a few pennies. I don't remember the exact number, but
Tom, so anyways, I got done with another website called Media Go Live. The premise behind that is going to be you go there and you can go live on all the different social media sites, okay? Do you know what the hardest thing is to do? Go live. To doing the buffering and all that is like impossibly insane hard.
Well,
I wanted to let you know.
That's why, you're forced to a couple of different platforms right now because.
I mean, I can't even, I can go, like 5 people can go live on my site, but I shut it off so only I can go live. But isn't that amazing? It takes up so much data. And not only that, no one's live. Like we're watching this and we're probably, 50, what are we, 30 seconds behind, 15 to 30?
we're some number of seconds delay. It's not actual real time, and it's not the half a second that's satellite delay. We're live is really on a little bit of a delay.
Right. Well, happy Easter, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Happy Easter. Happy Good Friday. Hope everybody enjoys their weekend. And if you celebrate Easter, I hope you enjoy your Easter.
74.
74. All right. Well, listen, it was a day off in the market. So a special thanks to everybody for showing up on a day off. Hope you guys.
Fun. It was a good stream, everyone.
Yeah. Hope everybody enjoyed themselves. We will be here next Friday. And for members, we'll see you guys Tuesday after the market closes. Everybody enjoy.
Hasta la vista.
Thanks.